Well, from the shyest storyteller who pushes themselves to rise to the occasion, to the excitable student who works hard to rein it all in, each one has done their very best to serve the story and the audience. They know it's not all about them, it's about the story. And a good storyteller takes a story from the past and reworks it, puts it in their own words, and gives it life for a new generation. Whether it's a story with a moral to make you think, or a jump tale to kind of tingle your spine, or a noodlehead story that tickles your funny bone, each student has polished their story to make it shine. This evening wouldn't be possible, as I said, without Diane Zapiga or Dr. Sullivan, our wonderful principal of the school. She loves this program and always welcomes it every year. And our local Freetown Cultural Council always supports this program as well. And Lisa Pacheco, who runs the Fore and Aft program, she allows me to bring the students here during the day when we're teaching storytelling to have their first practice performance with the children from the Fore and Aft program. And the teachers of GRAIS allowed me to go into the classrooms this year and have the students tell their story for their peers. And that's the hardest audience ever, and they did a fabulous job. Now, at the beginning of each class, we recite a storyteller's pledge, and I thought it would be wonderful to do that tonight. And Emily Litchfield has decided to come up and help me with this. Come on, Emily. I have it right here for you. Don't worry, I'm not going to expect you to memorize it, but I bet you could tell it without the paper. All right.
As a storyteller and story listener, I give myself permission to have fun, laugh, take risks, make mistakes, tell stories. I know stories connect us, and I'm connected to the stories. Let the stories begin!
Awesome! And that's how we start each class, and that's how we're going to start the festival tonight. We already have one storyteller waiting in the wings, and Rocco, you'll be there too, okay? Great, thank you. Awesome. Opening the festival tonight is a very mature and self-confident young man. He is all business in class. You know, he listens to directions, he participates in all of the activities, and he completes every assignment. But when he takes the stage, a smile spreads across his face and he is on. Please welcome Tyler Tran, sharing a folktale from Japan.
Hello, my name is Tyler Tran, and I will be performing The Endless Tale. There once was a king who lived in the far east, and he had nothing to do. So every day and all day long, he listened to stories. But even though they could be very long, he always thought they were too short. And so one day, he decided to have a competition. Whoever could tell an endless story would win the prize of marrying his daughter and taking his throne. Great. And many people failed, so they got beheaded. But one day, a man came in, and his story was about how there was a king, and he took all the grains of corn in the land, and he hid them in one place. And a swarm of locusts found that place, and they found a crevice in one of the walls. And the crevice was big enough for one locust to go in and bring out 1 grain of corn. And so the story went on for weeks, months, even years. And then the king finally asked, "How long will this story be going on?" And the storyteller said, "Yep, they've only cleared 1 cubit, and there's thousands more to go." And the king got mad and he said, "I don't care. Take my throne and marry my daughter. I don't care." And the king lived for a long time, but he never asked the man to tell a story again because he was afraid that he was going to be told an endless story.
Excellent job, Tyler. I knew you were the right person to open up the festival. Thank you. We're going to have some endless tales here tonight, too. Good job. Thank you. He's going to breathe now. Yay. Our next teller was always very attentive in class, but also very quiet. So the first time when we were practicing our stories in class, I wondered whether or not he was going to be able to do it or if he would be too shy and be unable to complete the story. Boy, was I wrong. He completely surprised me. He was ready and spot on. The very first time he told it with confidence and talent. Please welcome Rocco Aponte sharing a folktale from the Philippines.
Well, my name is Rocco Aponte, and I'll be telling you the story of the argument between the sea and the sky. So it all began, not quite the beginning of time, but near the middle, where our egg-shaped earth is still created. But at the middle of time, there was no continents or islands. There was only the creatures that dwelled beneath the waters. And there's also the sea and the sky. And these two had been great friends for thousands of millions of trillions of years. So one day, a hawk soared through the sky, and it would do what it would usually do today. It would flap around, dive, and then catch a fish and strangle it in the air and then try to eat it. But after a few hours, it got quite tired of that. So it decided to come up with a plan. If the sea and the sky could create a resting spot, then he could be there. So he flew up to the sky and said, "The sea thinks you're the sea thinks you're too ugly, and he always has to look down and have a conversation with the fish below, besides looking up, because you're so ugly that he has to close his eyes." So then he flies down to the sea and says, "The sky thinks sometimes you're too unreliable, sometimes you're so rough, and sometimes you're so calm, you can't predict the weather." So he flies out of the battlefield as the war begins. The sky makes hail balls and yeets them down to the sea, and then the sea makes waves as big as skyscrapers. It launches them up in the sky. So this goes on for a few hours, but they both get tired of having to produce waves and hail balls. So they come to a truce. But the sky can't take his hail balls back. So after more millions of trillions of years, those grow to continents and islands. And that's why if you ever go to a beach and you see waves crashing up against the shore, that means the sea is trying to wear all those continents and islands away.
I always love it at festival time because the children always end up putting a new spin on the story. There was things I hadn't heard before, Rocco. Excellent job. Thank you. They really upped their game. I love it. Great job. Our next storyteller. She is the student that chose one of the longer stories tonight. She is always working on her story, made sure to come for extra coaching. She really is diligent and very thoughtful. But she's always also ready to jump right in and participate in the storytelling games we play in class. Please welcome Isabella Reuter sharing a Native American myth from Canada.
Hello, my name is Isabella Reuter, and I'm going to be telling you the Native American Cinderella.
On the shore of what is now known as Canada, there lived a big village, and one of the warriors in the village was named Strongwind. He had a special power, and that power was to turn invisible, so he could look at what his enemies were planning on the village. And that's why his full name is Strongwind the Invisible. One day, he decided that he wanted to marry, so he announced to his village that the first woman that can see him walking home that night would be rewarded by marrying him. And so the chief's two older daughters decided that they wanted to go meet Strongwind, but they thought that their youngest sister would get in the way. So they burned her face with hot coals and cut her hair to make it uneven. And when the chief found out, he asked who did this. And the older sisters both agreed that it was the younger sister, Helena. Then one of the older sisters said, "She's just trying to ruin our night so we can't go see Strongwind and marry him." So that night, the two girls went down to the shore with Strongwind's sister. And Strongwind's sister was the only one who could see him. So when he was walking home to his hut, she asked, "Do you see him? Do you see my brother?" And one of them said yes, and the other agreed. Then Strongwind's sister asked, "What is the rope that draws his sleigh made out of?" And one of the girls said, "Fine straw," and the other one agreed. So the sister said, "I know you're lying. Never come back." And so they didn't. And the next day, Helena decided that she wanted to go meet Strongwind. And she hoped that he would still marry her even if she wasn't that pretty. So when she went down that night to the shore with his sister, and when he was coming to the hut, his sister asked, "Do you see him? Do you see my brother?" And Helena said, "No, I don't." And then his sister asked again, "Do you see him now?" And Helena said, "Yes, he's magnificent." And then his sister asked, "What is the rope that draws his sleigh made out of?" Helena said, "The rainbow." Then his sister invited Helena into the hut, and she washed Helena's face, and all the scars disappeared. And then she brushed her hair, and her hair turned long and beautiful again. And that night, Strongwind the Invisible and Helena got married. The end.
Thank you, Isabel. That was wonderful. Students are always surprised when I tell them there's over 700 versions of Cinderella from around the world, and that's one of them. Lovely. Thank you, Isabel. Our next teller has a very quiet approach to his story, which fits with his personality, but nevertheless, he is confident whenever he takes the stage. Please welcome Jacob Best as he shares this humorous folktale from Iceland.
Hi, my name is Jacob Best, and today I'll be telling you the story of I'd laugh too if I weren't dead. Once there were two women who got into an argument about whose husband was the greatest fool. When they couldn't settle the quarrel, they decided to put their husbands to the test. The first woman immediately came up with an idea to make her husband look as foolish as possible. When her husband got home from work that day, she was working at her sewing table. She went through all the motions of measuring and cutting, but with no material. And the husband couldn't help but to ask, "What are you doing?" And the wife replied, "I was hoping you wouldn't ask. I was making a brand new suit for you." And the husband said, "But I don't see anything." And then the wife replied, "Of course you don't see it. It's made of the very finest material." And she went on until the husband began to believe that maybe he could see it. Later, when the husband came back inside for lunch, his wife said, "Your brand new suit is ready," and she pretended to help him try it on. She smoothed out all the wrinkles and oohed and awed over the way he looked. In the meanwhile, the other woman came up with an idea to make her husband look as foolish as possible. So before her husband got out of bed in the morning, she stared at him with great concern. "Look at you, you're awfully pale. Don't get up." And the husband, who felt quite fine, liked the idea of staying at home and rest in bed for the day. But then, when he woke up later that day, his wife said, "Oh my goodness, you've taken a turn for the worse," and grabbed all the medicine and herbs and then began to doctor him. His wife was so convincing that he actually started to feel ill. And later, the coffin that the wife ordered had arrived.
What did he say?
The coffin, which had air holes for him to breathe and a window for him to see through. And the husband asked, "What is that?" And the wife said, "It's a coffin. Don't you know you're dead? You died in your sleep last night. Now, be quiet. Dead people don't talk." So he laid down, closed his eyes, and was placed in the coffin. When the villagers heard about the funeral, not much long after the mourners began to arrive, the other woman and her husband showed up, who was of course wearing his brand new suit that was made of nothing. In spite of this sad occasion, all the mourners began to laugh. And then the man in the coffin sat straight up and said, "Why, I'd laugh too if I weren't dead." In the end, the two women had to agree that it was a tie. There was truly no telling whose husband was the greatest fool.
I love the way he tells that story, so deadpan. He does such a good job with it. Thank you so much, Jacob. That was wonderful. Great job. Our next two storytellers are friends both in and out of school. They're neighbors, so it was an easy decision for them to decide to tell in tandem, tell together. It took them a bit of time to find their stride, but when they did, it was worth the effort. I know you will enjoy the fun energy they bring to this amusing story. Please welcome Jacob Alexander and Landon Pereira sharing a folktale from India.
Hi, I'm Jacob Alexander.
I'm Landon Pereira.
Today we're going to be telling the story of
Who will close the door?
So once there lived two brothers named Elon and Tokolaka. They were both extremely stubborn. One night after supper, the icy wind opened their door. Then Elon said to Tokolaka, "Tokolaka, shut the door."
No. Elon, you shut the door. I didn't open it.
I certainly didn't open it, and I won't shut it.
I didn't open it either, and I won't shut it.
They both sat there fuming over the fact that neither one of them would close the door. The icy wind howled. The storm swirled about the cottage. Neither of the brothers said a word. While their teeth were chattering, their fingers turning blue from the cold. Then Elon said to Tokolaka, "Tokolaka, I've been working hard long in the fields. Please, I need my rest. Go shut the door."
I've been cleaning the house, cleaning the dishes, milking the cows. I need my rest, so why don't you shut the door?
They both knew this argument couldn't go on forever. So Elon said to Tokolaka, "All right, you won't shut the door, I won't shut the door. You didn't open it, I didn't open it. Let's make a pact. We both sit here in our stools in silence. First one to talk has to close the door."
That's fine with me.
They both sat there in silence. While they were arguing, they didn't notice a stranger. This stranger was a thief, lurking near their door, overhearing the argument. Then the stranger thought to himself,
These people must be stupid. I'm literally standing right in front of them.
the thief noticed a cookie jar. He helped himself for one. Neither of the brothers said a word. The cookie was so delicious that he grabbed the jar and put it in his sack. After scavenging, the thief thought to himself after scavenging for loot,
These people must be poor.
then he found a nicely wooden carved box. He opened the lid and saw all the brothers' values to their name with a little of money. While the thief was picking up the box, both of the brothers jumped up and said,
Don't you dare touch that!
The thief was so startled by the sudden response that he grabbed the sack and ran to the door. While he was running, he didn't notice that he dropped his sack, because of his sweaty hands, of course. Neither of the brothers settled after him. Instead, Elon said to Tokolaka, "You spoke first, you shut the door."
I did not spoke first. You shut the door. You shut it. You shut it. You shut it. You shut it.
The argument may have been settled by now. The last time I heard, that door may be still open because last time I
heard,
they were still arguing.
Excuse me one moment, folks. They're so good. I had them out of order and they knew that I was wrong and they're backstage waiting. Good job, ladies. Our next tandem tellers are two lovely young ladies who knew what kind of story they wanted to tell and were always eager to jump in and participate in our storytelling activities. Please welcome Lily Mccaffrey and Ellie Pike as they share the spine-tingling tale from Canada.
I'm Lily. And I'm Ellie.
I'm Lily.
And I'm Ellie.
And we're telling the story of Tilly. Once there was a girl named Tilly who loved to scare herself. One day she begged her parents to let her have a room in the attic, and they agreed. One night while she was getting ready to go to bed, she heard a strange voice say,
Tilly, I'm coming to get you.
Chills went up and down her spine, but Tilly loved it. The next night she heard,
Tilly, I'm coming up the stairs.
Tilly began to get a little nervous. So the next morning, while she was downstairs with her parents, she told her parents what happened the night before. And her father said, Silly Tilly, you have to expect to hear some noises now and then. And the next night, while she was in bed, she heard,
Tilly, I'm on the last step.
Tilly went into her bed and pulled the covers up. Because she was so scared, she waited there until morning. And then she asked her parents if she could sleep in their room. And her mother said, Silly Tilly, it's just that wild imagination of yours. It's just that wild imagination of yours. The next night, while she was in bed, she heard,
Tilly, I'm knocking on your door.
She then heard a knocking sound at her door. Then she heard,
Tilly, I'm by your bed.
Tilly wanted to scream, but nothing came out.
Tilly, Tilly, I've got you.
The end.
Thank you, ladies. That's what we call a jump tale. Nicely done. Thank you so much. Now, finishing off our first half, we'll have an intermission right after this, is another tandem team comprised of two equally charming young ladies. They are mature beyond their years and always willing to take direction to improve their story. It has been my pleasure to work with them. Please welcome Amelia Brick and Delaney Gogan sharing a folktale from England.
Hi, I'm Delaney.
And I'm Amelia.
And we're gonna be telling the story of the baker's daughter.
So, a long time ago, there once was a baker who had two daughters. And though they were twins, they were spring and summer and winter.
One night when the wind swept,
One was generous and good-natured, while the other was selfish, greedy, and cross.
One night when the wind swept the streets like a broom, the good-natured daughter was serving in the baker's shop.
A ragged old woman shuffled in, leaning on a staff, and asked, "May I have a bit of dough?"
Yes, replied the baker's daughter, and pulled off a large piece of dough.
"And would you bake it in the oven?" asked the old woman.
Yes, again replied the baker's daughter, and put it into the oven.
The old woman sat in a corner and seemed to sleep until the bread was done. But it was done. The bread had swelled twice its size.
And then the good-natured daughter said, "Wake up, look, the bread had doubled in size."
"And so it shall always be for you because of your kind heart," said the old woman,
Who was really a fairy in disguise.
She touched the girl with her staff, and from that day she stood up tall and shiny. And she touched the girl with her staff, and from that day on, anything she put in the oven came out twice its size.
Time went on, and then it was time for the bad-natured daughter to serve in the baker's shop. The same ragged old woman came in leaning on a stick and asked,
"May I have a bit of dough?" "I guess so," said the baker's daughter, and she broke off a small piece.
"And would you bake it in the oven?" asked the old woman.
"I guess, if I must," said the baker's daughter, and she shoved it into the oven.
Again, the old woman seemed to sleep in the corner until the bread was done. When the bread came out, it had swelled twice its size as before. And then the baker's daughter said,
"That's far too large for the likes of her,"
and set it aside for herself. Then she pulled off a smaller piece, shoved it into the oven.
And when it was done, it had swelled twice the size of the first one. "That's far too large for the likes of her," said the baker's daughter. And she set it aside for herself.
Then she pulled off a smaller piece, barely the size of her thumb, and shoved it into the oven. When the bread came out, it was a big, beautiful piece of bread with nuts and raisins in it. And then she said,
"That's far too large and far too fine for the likes of her," and again set it aside for herself.
The old woman woke up and asked, "Is my bread done?"
"It burnt in the oven, hoo-hoo," said the baker's daughter.
"Is that all you have to say to me?" said the old woman.
"Well, what else do I have to say?" said the baker's daughter.
Then the old woman said, "If that's all you have to say to me, that's all you'll say again." And then she touched the girl with her staff, and then she turned into an owl, hooting into the night.
What a great job, ladies. Thank you so much. Now you made me hungry. I want some of that bread. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a 10-minute intermission. There's water back there. The restrooms are in the hallway. Please feel free to chat with your children. Children, you can get up and go find your parents. And I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Okay, we're ready for some more stories. Storytellers. Ready to listen to your fellow storytellers? Great, because I know they were so respectful of you, and I know you're going to give them the exact same respect when they're telling, because can't tell stories without an audience. Okay. Opening the second half of our festival is a fantastic storytelling team. They were the very first ones to tell in front of an audience during our practice session with the students in the fore and aft program here. And not only did they give their first performance, but unfortunately, we had a little bit of a snafu with the technical aspect of things that day. And Ellie's microphone wasn't working, and she said, "That's all right, I'm loud." And she was certainly loud enough to be able to carry her part of the story. And they were like true champs and professionals. They just went on with the story. They both handled it and gave a stellar performance. Please welcome Keenan and Ellie Wright sharing a folktale from South Africa.
Hi, my name is Ellie Wright, and I'm Keenan, and we will be telling the story of the lizard Saw. Once upon a time, there was a tortoise, and the tortoise's family was always complaining that their food was too bland. So one day, the lizard set off for his brother's house. The tortoise set off for his brother's house to get more salt. They wrapped it up in a bundle, and the tortoise was carrying it home. And then he realized that suddenly it felt really heavy. He turned around and saw a lizard standing there. He asked him, "What are you doing here, brother lizard?" And Lizard said, "Well, I own this bundle of salt now. I'm on it, can't you see?" They argued for a while, and they finally decided to go to the judges. When they got there, Lizard told his side of the story, and the tortoise told his, which was completely different, and the judges finally came to a decision. The decision was, it was only fair to cut the bundle of salt in half. Tortoise was upset because he knew that his side was correct. So when he got home, he was too tired to explain to his parents why there was only a grain of salt left in the bundle. He went to bed for 3 days, and on the third day, he had an idea. he decided to go off and search for Lizard. When he found him, he stood on him and said, "I own you now, because I'm on you." So they did the same thing. They argued and argued and argued until they went to the court. The court said the same exact thing, that it was only fair to cut Lizard in half. Now, unfortunately, Lizard isn't seen in this part of the world anymore. But lucky for him, his tail always grows back.
I'm telling you, ladies, there's something about those microphones with you, not your fault, but more technical difficulties, and you handled it like pros. Thank you so much. What a beautiful job you did with that story. You look lovely doing it, too. Thank you so much. Now, our next storyteller wasn't quite sure tonight whether or not he wanted to perform. He's a fabulous storyteller and has been sharing this story right along with the fore and aft program and in the classrooms. But like, most of us, we have an issue speaking, in front of an audience. And I am delighted to say that tonight he came ready to share this wonderful story. It's a very amusing noodlehead story. I know you will enjoy it. Please welcome Isaac Aruda.
Hi, my name is Isaac Aruda, and I'm going to be telling you the story of the silly, senseless servant. Once there was an important Chinese judge that had a silly, senseless servant. Even though he was much of a numbskull, he was kind-hearted and very nice. One time, the judge heard he has been sent to jail, so he rushed over to see what has happened. When he got there, he asked the servant, Why have you been sent to jail? So then the servant said, "Well, I've been sent to jail for picking up a piece of rope." And then the judge came all confused. He asked, why have you been sent to jail for picking up a piece of rope? And then the servant said, "Well, I didn't realize there was a cow on the other end of it." Another time was when the servant was working, the judge has called him over. So the servant said, "Okay, I'll be right there. I just have to hide my hoe in the last row." So then when the servant went over there, the judge said, "You fool, why would you say where the hoe was?" So when they went back outside, the hoe was already gone. So the judge rolled his eyes and said, "Such a silly, senseless servant." Another time was when the judge was walking, he felt uncomfortable. So when he looked down at his shoes, he realized he had different socks and shoes on. So he asked the servant to go back home. He told the servant, "Go home and get my fresh pair of shoes." So when the servant came back, he came back with nothing. So then the judge said, "Why aren't you back with my fresh pair of shoes?" But then the servant said, "Well, the ones at home are actually the ones you were wearing, so I decided not to bring them." So the judge rolled his eyes and said, "Such a silly, senseless servant."
Thank you, Isaac. Wonderful job. I love that story. I love the way you tell it, too. Thank you. Our next storyteller is a quiet and sweet young lady. You saw her earlier tonight. She came up and she did the pledge for you. And during our time together, Amelia struggled just a little bit to do her story in front of a group. And for our first practice performance here with the fore and aft program, she chose not to take the stage. But then before we were done, she came over and she said, "I want to do it." And when she got up, She gave such a wonderful performance. I was so very proud of her, and I continue to be. She is still sweet now, but I can add courageous to that list of adjectives. Please welcome Emily Litchfield sharing a pourquoi story from Puerto Rico.
Hi, my name is Emily Litchfield. I'll be telling the story of how the owl got his feathers. Long ago, owls had large parties and balls. One day, Hawk came up to Owl's door, and you see, back then, Owl was afraid of Hawk. So he slammed his front door and waited a little while, and then he went back to his door, and he opened it really slowly, and he grabbed a letter, and he slammed it one more time. And then he read the letter, and it said, "You've been invited to a party." He was super happy at first, but then he read it one more time, and he got really sad because he had nothing to wear. So he went to the party anyway, and he waited outside, and Hawk gathered up a bunch of feathers from different owls and birds. Then Hawk arranged them in different order, and he gave them to Owl to put on. He loved his new fine feathers too. And then Hawk said, "Don't forget, you have to give these feathers back at the end." And he was thinking of that all through at the party. It was coming close to the end, and Owl didn't want to give the feathers back. So he ran into the woods, and to this day, Owl is never to be found, and his fine feathers too. That's how Owl got his feathers. The end.
I knew you could do it, Emily. Wonderful, wonderful job. Beautiful. Our next teller may be tiny, but she is a huge ball of energy and always takes the stage with confidence. She has a ready smile and uses her feisty spirit to bring her story to life, adding her own special elements to add to the fun. Please welcome Alexis Allard sharing a magical folktale from England.
Hi, I'm Alexis Allard, and I will be telling the story of the 3 wishes. Once there was a woodcutter and his wife that lived in the woods. They were living in their tiny cabin. One day the woodcutter said, "I will go cut a giant tree and sell it at the market. We will be rich." And the wife said, "Only tiny twigs for us poor slaves." So the woodcutter went out to find a giant tree. He looked, and all he saw were tiny twigs and branches on the floor. And then he saw the biggest tree he's ever seen. He was just about to cut it down when he heard something. It was a fairy on the tree. He couldn't believe it. And then the fairy was very sad. She was talking about how she didn't want you to cut down the tree because it's lived long and long. She said if you didn't cut down the tree, she will grant you 3 wishes. So the woodcutter promised not to cut down the tree. He told his wife when he got home. The wife didn't believe him at all. A couple days went by, and they forgot about the 3 wish thing. And then he became very hungry and said, "I wish I had some sausage right now." Poof! On a plate in the middle of the table was a giant roast sausage. And the wife was very surprised, and she started to get angry because her husband just wasted a wish that could be very valuable. So she said, "I wish those sausages were stuck to your nose." Poof! The sausages were dangling one after another from his nose. He became very sad because he didn't want to have sausages dangling from his nose. He started to cry, And then the wife tried to get the sausages off, but they just wouldn't come off. So she unknowingly forgot about the 3 wishes and said, "I wish the sausages came off your nose." Poof! The sausages were once again on the middle of the plate and on the table. Although they weren't rich and famous, they had a good supper.
I told you, feisty. Great job, Alexis. Thank you. That's a really fun story. You brought it tonight. Thank you. Our next teller was one of the last students during our class time together to select his story. But like all good storytellers, he waited until he found just the right one. In the 19 years I have been teaching storytelling, I have always wanted someone to choose this story. And finally, someone did. For the very first time telling this wonderful folktale from Persia, please welcome Jack Oliveira.
Hello, I'm Jack Oliveira, and today I'll be telling you the story of the astrologer and the 40 thieves. So once there was this old astrologer named Jamal who lived in the city of Azkaban. And one day the king of Azkaban's treasure was stolen. And so the king asked Jamal to find out who stole all of his treasure. And he said, "Jamal, 40 chests were stolen from my treasure room. Please tell me who took them and where they hid them." And Jamal said, "Well, you'll have to give me 40 days to figure out who took the treasure and where it is." So the king said, "Okay, but if you can't find my treasure in that time, you will never be allowed in this kingdom again." So Jamal goes back to his house at the end of the night. What he doesn't know is that a thief is at his house listening in on what he's saying to see if he actually figured out who took the treasure and where they put it. So Jamal went up to his altar and he got a fig and he put one fig in a jar and said, "There's one dead," or no, there's just one. And then the thief thought he was talking about him, where he was actually just counting the days. So the thief ran home and to tell his boss that Jamal had some kind of magic power and could see him through the wall. So the next day, the 2 thieves were sent to listen to Jamal. And then Jamal said the next day, "Well, now the second one is upon me." And the thieves thought that he was talking about them again, but he was actually just counting the days. So they went to go tell the boss that he had some kind of magic power again, and the same thing happened for the next couple of days. And eventually, all 40 thieves were outside listening to him through the wall. And then he said, now all 40 are upon me." And then all the thieves burst through the door and said, "Please don't turn us into the king. We really don't want to go to jail." So the next day, Jamal went to see the king. And the king said, "Okay, where's my treasure? Tell me who took it and where it is." And Jamal said, "Okay, well, I can only tell you one. So what do you want to know? Where's your treasure or who took it? Up to you." So the king chose where the treasure is. And Jamal said, "The treasure is 1 mile north of town in an abandoned tower." And the king was overjoyed to find all his treasure. And Jamal was played handsomely. The end.
Terrific story. Thank you, Jack. Nicely done. Our next storyteller. From the very start, it was clear to me that Aubry would do whatever it took to perfect her story. She has a wonderful, calm presence on stage. Please welcome Aubry Venuti sharing a pourquoi story from Nigeria.
Hi, my name is Aubry Venuti, and
and today I'll be telling the story of why the sun and moon live in the sky. Once upon a time, there was sun and moon, and they were best friends with water. And water always invited sun and moon to their house, but one day that all changed. Sun asked water why water never comes to sun and moon's house, and water replied with, "Because your house isn't big enough. If I were to come, I would drive you both out." So that day, sun and moon went to work building their house. They were building up their walls and making the roof taller. And then it was raining. So they called over water, and water came over. And water asked, "Is it okay for me to come in?" And sun and moon replied with yes. So water started flowing in with all of his people, like his turtle and his fish. And then the house got to be too full, and the house went pop. And that's why the sun and moon live in the sky.
I love pourquoi stories. Pourquoi is a French word for why, and usually those stories tell why or how something has happened. Usually they involve animals. That one was special, involving the sea and the sky. Thank you, Aubrey. Nicely done. Nicely done. Closing out our festival tonight are two young ladies who are poised and talented and always ready to add a smile to your day. Please welcome Kennedy Poirier and Nora Smith as they end our night with enthusiasm and laughter, sharing this tale from the United States.
Hi, I'm Kennedy Poirier. Hi, I'm Kennedy Poirier. And I'm Nora Smith. And we're telling, oh, that's good, no, that's bad. It was my friend Joe's birthday just last week. Well, that's good. Not really, you see, everyone forgot. Well, that's bad. Not so bad, because we felt guilty, so decided to plan a huge party for him. Well, that's good. Not really, because the party was going to be in New York, but Joe was in California. Well, that's bad. Not so bad, because another friend said he'd fly to the party in his airplane. That's good. Not really, because when they were halfway there, the plane ran out of gas. That's bad. Not really, because luckily there are 2 parachutes on the plane. That's good. Not really, because Joe's parachute didn't open. That's bad. Not so bad, because luckily under them there's a huge haystack. That's good. Not really, because sticking out of the haystack was the biggest pitchfork Joe has ever seen. That's bad. Not so bad, because when he landed, he missed the pitchfork. That's good. Not really, because he also missed the haystack. No, that's good, because that's the end of our story. Oh, that's good.
So we began with some endless tales, and we ended with a story saying that's the end of our stories. And actually, it really is the end of our stories for tonight. You did a wonderful job, Kennedy and Nora. And I wanted to mention Kennedy, her brother, Cameron, are you here? Cameron? Yeah, Cameron, stand up there. Cameron was my storyteller for a few years, and he's also been with me in my Once Upon a Generation program now for a few years. Give him a round of applause. He's a great storyteller. Wonderful to have your sister with us tonight. Thank you, Cameron. I told her, you're so lucky you have your own coach at home. And it's a wonderful job. Storytellers, I'm going to ask you all to please stand up, face the audience, and take another bow. Give them another round of applause. All right, fellas, you have the seats sit back down. Today, now, you should all be so very proud of yourself. And now we're going to have a little award ceremony. Parents, they'll be called in the order that they perform. So if you have your cameras, you'll know exactly when they're coming up. So first off, 1 second. Many years ago, I devised this award when I was teaching at another school because I couldn't be there all the time with the students. I wanted them to remember the important things that they needed to remember when they were on stage. And so applause became an acronym. A, audience, make eye contact. P, pacing, not too fast, not too slow, just right. And on it went. And so I have made an applause award for each of the students. And first up is Tyler Tran. Rocco Aponte. They're surprised. I've given them a book. They didn't know that was coming. Isabella Ruda. Jacob Best. Jacob Alexander. Landon Pereira. Amelia Brick. Delaney Gogan. Keenan. Ellie Wright. Isaac Garuda. Emily Litchfield. Oh, I missed. That's right, because I had you out of sequence. My apologies. Lily Mccaffrey. Ellie Pike. Alexis Allard. Jack Oliveira. Very good, thank you, Jack. Nicholas Wink. Aubry Venuti. Kennedy Poirier. And last but certainly not least, Nora Smith. parents. I think, and I know you're all very proud of your children. Public speaking is one of the most difficult things to do, and they really rose to the occasion tonight. So I'm so very pleased. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's really been my pleasure to work with them, and I know some of you are moving on to the middle school. I will miss you next year. My fourth graders this year. I hope I see you again next year. And we had a wonderful time, and I thank all of you parents for allowing me to spend time with your children. I feel very blessed. Now, if you would like to take pictures of them with the backdrop, I'm happy to move the microphones away, and you can snap away. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for coming and supporting these fabulous children. Thank you.